Marley touched on something really important in the chat, and I really want to make sure that we get to it. Because we see her as kind of a rival to Jane, do you think that that's how it's clouded by what we see of her? Do you think if we saw this book through Blanche's eyes, that we would see her differently?
If she wasn't kind of a competitor for Jane right now and she was just, her character had a different role, we might be like, oh, Blanche, that's just how Blanche is. But because she's like directly tied to like being kind of in competition with Jane for a couple things, we would probably be like, ugh, of course, Blanche.
Yes, I think that is a good comment to make. Does anyone who has not spoke have a comment to make on her?
When Mr. Rochester was posed as the gypsy and gave her like fortune telling, and then she came back and threw like a little temper tantrum about like the bad news that she received about his fortunes, I think that showed a lot about her character and like what her goals are with Mr. Rochester.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting scene where we kind of get to know Blanche a lot better. If we get to know a lot of people better, and we really don't have time to get into that, so we will definitely touch on the gypsy thing next time, because that was a little interesting. Are there any other questions that you all might have for the end of the period?
Can I mention my favorite scene of the whole book so far?
Yes, of course.
When his room almost burns down and she rescues him, and then he leaves and comes back, and they're standing there in the bedroom and it's just them. And he says, and he holds her hand and says, or she says, I got to go back to my room. And he's like, yes, you do, or something. And he keeps holding her hand. That's a very powerful scene, because at that moment, you realize neither one of them want her to leave. And then it says something like she goes back to her room and like she's all perturbed. It's a very great scene.
Yeah,
it's very like romantic, and in the dark castle, and they're holding hands, and they hold hands for a little bit, and eventually she's moral enough to say something like, I hear Miss Fairfax or something, and then he's like, well, we can't have that, and then she goes back to her room, but she says, I could not sleep that night. It's a great scene.
Yes, it is a great scene, and we're going to talk more about that scene next time, because we're going to be talking about the evolution of their relationship and how it continues to go on. So you all are going to read chapters 20 through 27, and I'm just going to remind you that it's on slide 10 of the Jane Eyre intro. It has the dates for Jane Eyre, and for the 22nd, read chapters 20 through 27 and focus on the development of the relationship as a whole, just the relationships in the book, but also of Jane, specifically of Jane and Rochester. And of course, if you have any notes, you can put it in that document. That is for your all's use. And I think we are done for the day. So if you all want to stick around, you can. If not, don't do something stupid, have too much of the right kind of fun, go forth, build a snowman.